So, I think Strongman has gotten a lot more popular in the last few years. It seems like a lot more people are doing it. And you see some crossover there. I think Larry Wheels is going to be doing a Strongman soon. And then I think Half Thor just did a powerlifting competition. So, I mean, what is it? Do you think they're similar enough that somebody who's really good at one is going to be really good at the other? Or are there certain aspects that allow somebody to be really good at one that maybe limits them in something else? Because you do see that in bodybuilding and powerlifting. Sometimes the best powerlifters really don't make good bodybuilders and vice versa.
Yeah, I think with strongman and powerlifting, if you ask any strongman, they have to have a foundational base of strength, right? It is strongman, first of all. So when you need to get strong, you have to do the main movements, which are the powerlifting movements. So I feel like if you are a strongman, you have exposure to powerlifting. I think powerlifters, maybe if they haven't been exposed to strongman, have a nice base that would go well with strongman. Because if they're doing, the deadlift, the press, there's not many squatting events in strongman, but you want to have leg strength, when you're doing a lot of the events. But at the same time too, me having an Olympic lifting background, which is really nice as well, even if you just understand the basics of Olympic lifting and triple extension, that has helped a lot in strongman too. So it's kind of like this little triad where they kind of all play off each other. But I think the underlying biggest thing in strongman that I've had to realize is strength. You need to, I've been taking this whole last year just to increase my numbers. And I would say for some people who are maybe a little bit opposite of me, you want to still stay athletic. I think you're going to see a bigger wave of more athletic strongman coming into the picture. You got Larry Wheels, who is just a freak of nature, who is an athletic dude, and he's massive, and he's super strong. And when you see sports even like CrossFit, for example, which is very aerobic based, but for their size, they're really strong athletes as well. Now, what happens if, say, maybe you get a wave from CrossFit who want to start doing strongman? Because I think I saw most of the strongman equipment I ever saw growing up, actually throughout my CrossFit kind of span when I was in there, there's always stuff in the corner, but it was all strongman stuff. So I think you got to give them a huge shout out for even just having it kind of in the back of your mind, at CrossFit for doing that. But I think, you're going to see more of a wave as it gets more popular. You're going to have some guys who are super athletic now with the right programming to get really strong. They're going to be some secret weapons that are going to be popping up. But I don't know if I think we met through Alan Thrall, and Alan Thrall knows Brian Alzer, and Brian Alzer is a really good friend of mine. Brian is, you watch some of his videos, that guy moves insane for his body weight. And when you start getting way more of those guys in strongman, it's going to be really, really entertaining to watch and pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think with a lot of these strength sports, it's cool seeing as it becomes more popular, you have people with better and better genetics kind of coming into it. And you really see that expanding, and things that we thought a couple of years ago nobody's going to ever be able to do. Now people are just blowing past it. It's kind of amazing to watch.
Absolutely.
So you touched on programming a little bit there. Can you touch on some significant differences, if there are them, for programming for strongman versus somebody who's maybe exclusively doing powerlifting?
Yeah, so with depends on, I guess, where they're at. Any of this that I say is going to depend on the individual, so I can't really give one great thing for all people. But I would say typically the way that I program is it depends on if I have a competition coming up and how I modify the programming as the competition approaches. So if I don't have a competition anytime soon, I'm just trying to get as strong as possible. And that's going to be through the powerlifting movements or their variations, playing with the volume, intensity, and frequency of the lifts. So that's kind of what my off season will look like. And if I'm really bad at some event, I'll put that in my programming just to stay fresh and keep it moving. So for me, I don't like doing yoke walks. So I've been doing more yoke walks in the off season, as I get closer, because it's going to be something in nationals. Now, as I get closer to a competition, I'm going to specialize towards the events that I'll be doing. So, that's what you'll see probably in the next 20 weeks for me leading up into nationals is I haven't been doing, many sandbag throws because that's what's in there, or many axle bar deadlifts or anything like that. But those are now going to start popping up in my programming as I get closer. So I like to, it's just any, block periodization. So we have our developmental block, just building strength. And then as we go down that chain, eventually we're going to have very specialized training for the competition. And that's all I'm going to focus on, just because if you start doing a bunch of different things that are in the competition, right, you're not specific now. And if you're training for something, you want to be as specific as possible to the event that you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. And are there certain accessory lifts that you perform just for one versus the other? I think people are very familiar with the accessory lifts for powerlifting. I don't know if I've heard too many accessory lifts for strongman. I feel like almost like traditional lifting is the accessory for strongman.
Yeah. Actually, something we were running the other day at a strongman class was stone hugs. So a lot of times people aren't comfortable, or they just haven't got enough exposure to picking up an atlas stone. So depending on where the stone is, if it's too far in front of you or too far behind you, that plays a big role in being able to pick up this big round object off the ground. So last night in the strongman class, we had everybody literally getting down into a deadlift position, hugging the stone and picking it up, pretty much standing straight up and then back down to the ground, kind of working on like the back muscles and just getting used to, making sure they're keeping a nice, I would say, stone path instead of bar path, with the stone going up and down. But you can do stuff like that, or just work on different parts of the lifts that you're doing. So maybe it's a log clean and press. Maybe you're just going to do a log clean and just get it up to your shoulders and then come back down, which in itself is going to be a great movement to throw in. So yet again, it depends on the athlete. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? But it could be even as simple as people aren't used to using the axle bar to press overhead because it's now 2 inches thick. So if you're used to pressing with a traditional barbell, which actually does have some whip in the bar, right? Now you have an axle bar, it's a stiff bar. It's going to be harder to press. There's different variables now. So those are just accessory movements that anybody could throw in just to spice up their programming. Or if you are a power lifter getting into strongman, that's going to be stuff that you want to get exposure to make sure that you can perform the best as possible.